Next up in our worst Pokemon list, we have the Unova region. Home to the largest roster of new Pokemon in any generation, and surprisingly, despite these large numbers, honestly, none of the Pokemon in this video are nearly as bad as the ones I mentioned in previous videos. Since Game Freak made the radical decision to not include any old Pokemon in Black and White's main story, they actually did a pretty darn good job at making most of these guys decently viable. Most of them. So good morning everybody, good morning, it's JPR, and these are the worst Pokemon to use in the Unova region. Number 10, Bouffalant. This Pokemon is a classic example of how sometimes the best ability is availability. And oh boy, you definitely don't want to be a mono normal type who's only available on the last route in the game. Bouffalant's low speed of 55 means it's going to struggle against most of the late game opponents, especially Chantal and Marshall, who just have an outright type advantage on it. With that being said, Bouffalant does offer some positives, which is why it's only number 10. For starters, when you catch it, it should already have two of its best attacks, Head Smash and Mega Horn, both coming in at an impressive 120 power. Furthermore, its two main abilities are also quite good, as Reckless powers up Head Smash by another 20%, and Sap Sipper gives this Pokemon immunity to Grass-type attacks. Not that many trainers at this point in the game will be using them, but Bouffalant's saving grace really comes in the form of Black 2 and White 2. Where it can at least be caught on Route 9 just before challenging the 7th gym. So you'll at least get more than an hour's worth of playtime with this Pokemon in the sequels. It's still far from amazing, but with its high attack stat and incredibly wide move pool, it's at least a decently usable Pokemon and definitely takes advantage of Unova's unbreakable TMs. Number 9, Musharna. Unfortunately, the Psychic type struggles mightily in Unova. Not only do they have to deal with record numbers of good Bug, Dark, and Ghost-type Pokemon in this region, but they also offer zero winning matchups against anybody significant aside from Marshall and Roxy. However, what Musharna does have going for it is its early game presence. Munna is available right after defeating the first gym, learns Psybeam only level 11, a crazy strong move for that point in the game, and since it doesn't really learn any other good moves for a while, you can pop the Moonstone on it as soon as you get it from Pinwheel Forest. Then you have a Pokemon with 116 base HP and 95 special defense at only level 20. An extremely valuable tank, especially for a Nuzlocke. Unfortunately, Musharna's usefulness does start to wear off around the mid-game though. Around Elisa's gym, Musharna's stats are no longer considered all that impressive, and the growing number of Dark-type threats at this stage makes sure that it'll be heading to the PC box sooner rather than later. Musharna also gets no help from the sequels, as it and its pre-evolution are post-game exclusive catches, which is a huge bummer because you don't even get to beat Roxy, which would have been a big plus for this Pokemon, maybe even enough to save it from the list. Number 8, Behem. Alright, now take everything I just said about Musharna, but take out the part where I said it's useful in the beginning. Because Behem is essentially the same thing, but its pre-evolution isn't available until just before the 6th gym in both pairs of games. On top of that, Behem evolves excruciatingly late at level 42. This Pokemon doesn't have great abilities, has poorly distributed stats at best, and a level up learn set that consists almost entirely of Psychic type moves. The only real positive is that Behem does learn Thunderbolt via TM, which can be gotten from P2 Lab right after you obtain Surf. This is really the only thing that sets it apart from Musharna, and Electric is a surprisingly valuable type in this region due to the abundance of flying types. But that's pretty much all I can say. Behem is strictly a worse version of Musharna, except in Black 2 and White 2 where you can at least catch it. Low bar, I know. But unfortunately, catching it means that you probably missed out on the infinitely better Nuzlocke encounter of Litwick in Celestial Tower, so even then, there's not much to celebrate. Number 7, Audino. Audino is probably the closest thing this region has to a gimmick Pokemon. Basically just being designed because the anime staff needed a new Pokemon to give Nurse Joy, I'm assuming. Its gimmick is that it makes you think you're gonna find something cool on the shaking grass, and then oop, it's just free EXP again. In fact, the best thing Audino has going for it is that KOing it makes you level up really fast. That, and with 103 base HP, it does have a role as a decent early game tank. It also learns Secret Power at level 20, so it at least has some way to deal damage for a little bit, until its base 60 attack and special attack becomes so bad that it's no longer usable. Which is a shame, because including TMs, Audino probably boasts the best move pool in all of Unova, which is great now that they no longer break. The problem is, much like Cast Form from Hoenn, Audino doesn't really have the damage output to justify using it as a high coverage offensive Pokemon. It's much better suited for playing defense. And you know what the best defensive strategy is in Pokemon? Using a freaking potion and leaving Audino in the box! But hey, say it's a hardcore Nuzlocke. If you have no good encounter to line up on a route, you can feasibly guarantee yourself an Audino and at least give yourself a decent support Pokemon. Number 6, Lilligant. Let me warn you, this is the first of many grass types in this region. The Unova region may not hate this type as much as Johto, but it's a pretty firm second place. Of the roughly 140 species you'll be fighting against in Black and White's main story, flying types make up about 11%. I shouldn't have to tell you just how much better bug types got in this gen. Poison types may not be as numerous as previous regions, but bear in mind that almost every plasma grunt will be carrying Trubbish or Whirlipede. And while fire and ice are still relatively rare, they are much more common than they were in past regions. On top of that, most of Unova's gyms, especially the late game ones, are very aggressive towards grass. With that being said, Lilligant on paper doesn't look that bad. 90 speed and 110 special attack seem to make it look like a good offensive Pokemon. Though the main issue is just its move pool. I don't know why, but it feels like every Gen 5 grass type is designed like a Gen 2 grass type, where they literally only learn grass type moves, and it's kind of annoying. However, move pool wise, Lilligant has two things really going for it. As a Petalil, it gets Giga Drain at level 26, and then if you immediately evolve it with a Sunstone, you'll get Quiver Dance at level 28. Yeah, don't ask me why Lilligant is one of the only stone evolutions that keeps learning moves afterward, it's weird to me too. This does mean that you missed out on Energy Ball, which Petalil doesn't get until level 35, but hey, it's Quiver Dance. I think the trade-off is worth it. It's sad to have to rank Lilligant this high though. It's a charming design, it looks like it has the stats to perform, it's just that Giga Drain and Quiver Dance are probably the only two moves you'll ever be using. And that leaves this Pokemon with big chunks of the story where it's just not really doing anything. Hey, you better not go anywhere, we got 4 more regions left to do after this one, maybe 5 whenever Gen 10 comes out, so be sure to subscribe and leave a like in this video if you're enjoying it so far. Thanks! Number 5, Maractus. Oh, grass types, you thought you were done? Nope, time for round 2. Now, I will say, when I first outlined this video, I fully expected to rank Maractus around the top 3 or 4, and, well, I was close. I guess 5th isn't much better. But honestly, I was surprised when looking at its stats. Sure, it's a bit slow and frail, but it has a pretty decent 106 special attack. On top of that, by the time you catch it, it's already close to learning Giga Drain at level 26. And then, if you feel like going gambling, who doesn't? It gets Acupressure at level 29, a move that basically doubles one of its stats at random. If you get lucky and get speed, you could actually turn Maractus into an okay Sweepermon. Unfortunately, like Lilligant, Maractus' Gen 5 move pool does leave a lot to be desired though. It does get access to some decent physical attacks like Drain Punch, Aerial Ace, and Poison Jab, but as far as special moves go, I hope you're happy with just Giga Drain. Furthermore, while Acupressure is a fun gimmick, it's not always reliable. And with Maractus being so frail, it isn't afforded many opportunities to set up. You could feasibly have fun with this Pokemon and see some okay success though. It's like Gen 5 Carnivine, situationally useful at best. Number 4, Leavanny. Triple overtime for the grass types here. Well, I do have good news, this is the only bug type represented in this list, so at least they got a lot better. Anyway, Leavanny is a very odd case of a Pokemon. If you're willing to grind friendship, it can evolve pretty early, but sorta has to take a backseat in both Berg and Elise's gyms until it can finally shine at Clay's gym. In Black 2 and White 2, its situation is even worse with Roxy added as the second gym leader. But it does learn some really powerful moves, and not too late in the game either. As a Sewaddle, it starts with Bug Bite and Razor Leaf, which both aren't bad by that point in the game, and in its 30s it gets both Leaf Blade and X-Scissor. Combine that with some TMs like Aerial Ace and Shadow Claw, and this Pokemon actually boasts some decent coverage. But obviously, Leavanny's fatal flaw is that it is a bug and grass type. Perhaps one of the game's worst type combinations, if not the worst. This means Leavanny is weak to almost every common type, and while it is faster than Maractus, it is only marginally bulkier, which is certainly offset by how many more weaknesses it has. In fact, this Pokemon's typing pretty much makes it unusable from the 6th gym all the way to the end of the game. You know, right when it finally gets those good moves I was talking about. It's only slightly better in Black 2 and White 2 where Marlin gets added and Bryson gets removed. Number 3, Liepard. Pretty much the only thing that stands out about Liepard is its prankster ability. An ability that you can't get in a main story playthrough. Well, at least now that the dream world is dead, which means Liepard's dreams are also dead. Also, what is with these cat Pokemon? This is the 3rd region in a row where the regional cat has made the top half of the list. Now, admittedly, yes, Liepard is significantly better than the likes of Delcatty and Purugly. It actually evolves at a decent level 20, provides slightly more utility as a dark type, and has stats that actually aren't that horrible. The issue is mostly just how outclassed it is. Liepard is like if you asked ChatGPT to make a dark type. Its move pool is severely lacking in sauce. much like the other Pokemon who made this list. And sadly, Dark types really don't get to shine in Unova until the League rolls around. And at that point, not only is Liepard severely outclassed stat-wise, it's also outclassed by every other Dark type in the Unova region, who not only have better stats, but far better move pools. Crocodile, Bisharp, Zoroark, Scrafty. In a region full of very accessible and very powerful Dark types, it just leaves the player with no real reason to ever use Liepard. Even in Black 2 and White 2, virtually every returning Dark type is also far better than Liepard. It doesn't even really benefit from being an early game Dark type either, as Liepard doesn't get its first decent Dark type attack until level 31 with Assurance, and doesn't learn its first base 70 power Dark move until level 43 with Night Slash. And by that time, every other Unova Dark type is outrunning it by a country mile. Number 2, Watchog. The real biggest flaw with Watchog is that it has the shared status as the Route 1 normal type with Lillipup, who is just infinitely better. So Patrat doesn't even get one route of usefulness. Lillipup is faster, hits harder, and evolves earlier than Watchog does. Not to mention, it's also the GOAT of Black and White speedruns. It's crazy how much I'm talking up Stoutland considering it's literally in the lowest tier of competitive play, but that just proves even more how bad Watchog is. The only real plus that this Pokemon provides is that Patrat gets Crunch absurdly early at level 16, which, hey, that's a better Dark-type move than Liepard is ever going to get. But even compared to Liepard, Watchog's stats are just abysmal. And it's stuck with Illuminate and Keen Eye, two of the worst abilities in the entire game, one of which only just raises the amount of time that wild Pokemon attack you. So have fun with that. If Stoutland is the speedrunning champ, then Watchog is the speedrun to disaster. And somehow, it's still not number 1 on this list. As always, it's time for our dishonorable mentions. Emolga is first on our list, as its underwhelming stats certainly appear to make it a candidate for one of Unova's worst. However, due to its high speed and hit-and-run nature with Volt Switch, Emolga can certainly be a decently viable Pokemon. Electric is a very valuable type to have in this region, especially in Black 2 and White 2 when Marlin gets added as the 8th gym leader. Next up is Durant, who you may expect to be on this list for the same reason as Bouffalant, as it simply appears too late to be useful. But truth be told, in a Nuzlocke, Durant could actually be a great last-minute catch for the league. It resists Ghost in Gen 5, beats Grimsley pretty easily, beats Caitlyn, and can at least tank Marshall's physical hits. Most importantly though, it's one of the few Pokemon capable of outspeeding and KOing Gets's Hydreigon. So you may not have Durant for a long time, but it will be a good time. On the note of late game availability, Braviary and Mandibuzz certainly come to mind, who, evolving at level 54, may not even be considered usable to many players in Black and White. Fortunately, Black 2 and White 2 adds an early game encounter with them on Route 4, so you get to experience using them at a way lower level than usual, which does make them significantly better. Same goes for Volcarona, who also gets this treatment in the sequels. Can you believe we've done a whole Unova-based video without saying anything bad about a monkey? But surprisingly, all 3 of the monkeys aren't horrendous main story options. Of the 3, Simisage is probably the worst just due to how bad Grass matches up against everything. But even then, Simisage gets Seed Bomb really early at level 22, and later gets Acrobatics via TM, which somewhat eases the pain of being a Grass type. Cryogonal is a Pokemon who is absolutely horrendous in competitive play, but assuming you're lucky enough to get one, it's not the worst for Black and White's endgame. Cryogonal is really fast, comes with Ice Beam right away, and beats the Dragon Gym shortly afterward. So he's definitely more useful than the 10 on this list, even if he isn't in Black 2 and White 2. And lastly, Basculin. While Basculin may be one of the most frail, fully evolved Pokemon in Unova, he does have an ace up his sleeve, Adaptability, one of the best abilities in the entire game. With it, he can fire off 80 base power Aqua Jets and 180 base power Aqua Tails. This means as long as you outspeed your opponent and they don't resist water, you should be one-hit KOing things more often than not. And number 1, Heatmor. Heatmor combines almost all the bad aspects of all the Pokemon on this list. First and foremost, it's only available on Victory Road in Black and White. You know, the literal last area of the main story. And in Black 2 and White 2, it gets the Musharna treatment, being removed from the main story entirely. There's a whole volcano area in White 2, and they still forgot to add Heatmor there. Well, let's focus solely on Black and White since the sequels aren't a factor. You may think, well, golly gee, if it's this late in the game, surely it must have good moves like Bouffalant and Durant, right? Wrong again, eager McBeaver. Flame Burst will probably be its only usable move when you catch it, so unless you're willing to shell out 70,000 big ones to buy the Fire Blast TM, you're stuck with this as your only fire type attack until level 51 when it finally learns Flamethrower. Not that fire coverage really makes a difference, because of all the late game trainers, Heatmor only really assists with defeating Grimsley's Bisharp, Ends Vanillix, and Ends Klinklang. But also, fighting types do the same thing, and almost every single fighting type in Unova is really good, so please for the love of God just use one of those instead. Also, Heatmor has two absolutely garbage abilities, and stats that are practically begging for your opponent to put it down in one swift blow. I would say, well, just stick with Heatmor for the entire postgame, and then maybe you can fight Alder with him, but no! We are not doing this! This region has so many good fire types, and you're settling for Heatmor? Please, come back to the light, my son. Your family misses you. We're worried about you. Why are you wasting hours of your life trying to make Heatmor good? Make better life choices, please! Anyway, my blood pressure is up, and I'm hot, and I'm sweaty, because there are Heatmor believers out of all the 156 Pokemon in Unova. I hope you're proud of yourselves. Be sure to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed, subscribe for more videos just like this one, and I'll see you guys next time.